Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you, and welcome to this EURAXESS webinar, which is called ERC, the European Research Council, Grants for Top Researchers from Anywhere in the World. And I've just had a look, we had 900 registrations for this webinar from 31 different countries. So a huge variety of people are joining us, and I think this is very much in line with the motto of the ERC, namely open to the world. So I'm very excited about today's session, which is dedicated to the ERC, which is the premier funding agency in Europe. We have two speakers with us today who will talk us through the different funding opportunities that are available to all of you, not only as PIs, but also opportunities for short-term attachments with ERC-funded projects in Europe. My name is Susanne Rentzow-Vasu. I am the regional representative of EURAXESS ASEAN. I'm joining you from Singapore today, and our two speakers are joining us from Brussels. We have with us today Dr. Andreas Keil. Dr. Andreas is currently working for the Scientific Management Department of the ERC Executive Agency in Brussels. He is also from an academic background, and I think that's fabulous because that means he knows how researchers are ticking, what they're looking for, what kind of assistance they need. Andreas has worked as a researcher in Germany and in the UK, and I think reading from his PhD, he was also involved in facilitating the negotiations for the UN Climate Change Convention, so very exciting. Andreas has different degrees, including a PhD, and he covers various fields, including meteorology, translation, and business economics. So he can, I think, speak to at least 50% of everyone joining today. And our second speaker is Dr. Davide Innocenti, who is a colleague, also working for the ERC Executive Agency in Brussels. He is part of the Call and Project Follow-up Coordination Unit, and he works very much on the implementation of visiting programs for potential ERC applicants and international early career scientists. David is also an academic by trade, and I think his background is in physics, particularly in material sciences, and he has held several positions as a researcher all across Europe. So both of them are in a fabulous position to advise us on the different opportunities available to you by the ERC. And we will hear a lot about what makes ERC grants so exciting, the emphasis on bottom-up, on leaving it to the researchers themselves to identify the areas where they want to carry out their frontier science. Now, before we start, I've already said 900 people, 31 countries. I've prepared a couple of polls to give us an opportunity to find out a little bit about you. Now, everyone, I'm starting a poll now, which is called, how familiar are you with the European Research Council? I hope you can see this. So just for us to get an idea what you already know about the ERC, so that Andreas and David can tailor their presentations a little bit. And I can see not too many have knowledge. So 41% say they have very little knowledge. So I think this is then opportune time for us to hear more about the ERC. I have also a second poll, and this is just interesting for us. Now, at this point in time, with what you know about the ERC, are you planning to apply for an ERC grant in the future? The next starting grant likely going to be announced in the spring of 2021. So at this point in time, how many of you would think, yes, I am planning to apply? And we see, yeah, people are considering. They might not have a host yet, but a lot of interest at least. So I think this is great to know. I will ask the same question at the end of the presentation. That gives us some comparison. Now with this, I think just a couple of notes on the proceedings today. We will start with the presentation by Andreas. You as the audience can ask questions throughout the presentation via the chat function. Please type away your questions. We have a dedicated Q&A session, and Andreas and David will respond to all of your questions. We will also share the slides and the recording of the webinar in the follow-up email. So focus on the presentations. And with this, I will now make Andreas the presenter. And Andreas, please do share your slides and start the presentation. Your slides can be seen.
Okay, welcome everyone, also from my side, to this presentation on ERC grants for top researchers from anywhere in the world. I'm delighted to have seen so many participants to this meeting from so many different countries and so many different backgrounds. So I'm delighted about this. We would like to thank specifically the organizers for organizing such an event on ERC funding opportunities. The first thing I would like to do is to give you an idea about the structure ERC sits in and what the ERC is altogether about. So the European Commission has various Director Generals, one of them being the Director General for Research and Innovation. And in 2007, they made a completely new step. They went forward with establishing the European Research Council as a completely new organization. That means we are relatively young. We only exist since 2007. So what is this ERC? The ERC is, first of all, funding and with it part of the Horizon 2020 program of the European Commission. This Horizon 2020 runs from 2014 to 2020 and has various strands of funding. There's network funding, collaboration funding, and also individual funding like the ERC. As I said, the ERC was funded in 2007. We started small. It was the Framework Program 7, running from 2007 to 2013. Systematically, the budget for the ERC was increased over that time. And in 2014, Horizon 2020 started with a larger budget. And the budget which we have in ERC under Horizon 2020 is 17% of the total budget of Horizon 2020. And this amounts to an amount altogether close to 13 billion euro. In 2019 was the first year when the ERC had an annual budget larger than 2 billion euro. So that's what is just finishing at the moment. And from 2021, there will be a new funding program, a new EU Research and Innovation program. Again, it will run for 7 years, from 2021 to 2027, and the final budget is still to be decided. Secondly, the ERC is the ERC Scientific Council, and this is very specific about the ERC. Other funding programs of the European Commission, European Union, do not have that specific setup. They are run by the European administration. You see that, for instance, for the Marie Curie Skłodowska fellowships. The ERC, though, is run purely by scientists. So it's a science-led organization. The Scientific Council consists of 22 eminent scientists. They represent all fields of science, which you can imagine. Our president at the moment, interim president Jean-Pierre Bourignon, for instance, is a mathematician. And you see vice presidents being bioinformatics, structural biology, and high energy physics and theoretical physics. And so all fields of science, social sciences, engineering, applied and basic sciences are represented. This is really very unique. The Scientific Council makes all the decisions. They decide on which programs we have, which funding we offer, how much goes in which area of funding, all done by the Scientific Council. They write the ERC work program, which is a legally binding document for that. Who's implementing this? Now, I would say us. So David and I work for the ERCEA, the executive agency of the ERC. We implement the work program, which includes the evaluation process of the scientific proposals you put forward, and also we conduct everything around payments and we follow up the running projects. Though the ERCEA is still a rather slim, efficient organization, so we don't fill up this whole building which you see here, just a few upper floors, despite we are still a few hundred people by now. What is very important to know about the ERC? I mentioned it before, the ERC is individual funding. That is most important. We do not fund networks. We do not fund big collaborations. This is not the idea. There are other fundings available from the European Commission for that. The ERC is, if you want, high-level individual funding. So you, as a PI, have an idea, have a research project, you put it forward to the ERC, you will be getting the money, it's bound to you. With this money, of course, you can do more. You can hire a team, you can buy instrumentation, you can get access to equipment. You can have collaborations around the world with this, but you are the one holding the grant. That makes it an individual funding. It says here also from all over the world, which is very important. So it does not matter which is your nationality, in which country you're currently working or have been working before. Everyone is welcome to apply. The only thing that makes it European funding is that you, of course, have to be based to a certain amount of your time in Europe. It's long-term funding. We talk about typically 5 years, sometimes longer. You have time to conduct your project. What we typically look for is pioneering projects in any field of frontier research. Any field you can imagine. It can be life sciences and physical sciences and engineering, social sciences and humanities, or anywhere in between. Any new fields are especially welcome. Looking at some facts and figures. Up to now, the ERC has funded over 10,500 projects of all different types. Doing so, it has funded people with 82 different nationalities, being the PIs of the projects, even more if you look at the team members of the projects. It has funded projects sitting in 34 different countries in the European Union or its associated countries. So you can be hosted obviously then more than in just EU member states, which are obviously less than 34. Associated countries, they change over time. Countries like Israel or Switzerland, to name the most active ones in our funding, you could take a grant to these countries. The publication record from these grants is rather impressive. We have over 125,000 publications reported by ERC projects, and those projects have won more than 1,300 prestigious prizes so far. Altogether, in teams, we have even more people working. It's not just the PI. So altogether, ERC grants have paid for more than 75,000 professionals working in ERC grants. So which are the funding schemes we have to offer? That's probably the most important for you to understand, to choose the right one. As a starter, as a young researcher, you most likely should be interested in the starting grant. The size of the grant is up to 1.5 million euro. That's a maximum. You do not have to take the maximum. And this would be for a period for 5 years. To be eligible, you have to be 2 to 7 years after your PhD. Very importantly. There is extension of this period, actually. For instance, if you have children, you can extend this period, this eligibility window, by 1.5 years per child, and a few others to apply. Also to mention is, then you can get up to 1 million extra on top of the 1.5 million for various reasons. The reasons are that, very important for you, you move your grant from outside Europe or one of the associated countries into Europe. So this, of course, costs you extra money to establish yourself, get maybe extra team members, extra facilities. So this alone is a reason to get up to 1 million extra. Other reasons is if you run a big campaign, an observational campaign, a field campaign, or if you build equipment or need access to large equipment. So these reasons would give you 1 million extra. The next step are the consolidator grants. The size of consolidator grants is up to 2 million euro over the 5 years. And like for the starting grants, by the way, that would be proportionally if you go for less, let's say 4 years projects. You can again get this 1 million extra for the same reasons. And to be eligible to apply for a consolidator grant, you would be typically between 7 to 12 years after your PhD. This is very sharp on the day, very clearly defined. Beyond this, you should apply for an advanced grant, meaning more than 12 years after the PhD. There's no eligibility window, so theoretically you can also be 1 year after the PhD, and you could apply for an advanced grant, theoretically. But practically, being after 12 years, you're effectively forced to go for an advanced grant. They are, of course, very attractive, but even more competitive than the others. Advanced grants, you can get up to 2.5 million euro over 5 years, and that 1 million extra for the same reason mentioned before. What typically is asked is an excellent track record of scientific achievement. And we are looking there onto the last 10 years of what you've done. This gives you a chance to be competitive if you're, let's say, 40 years old compared to a 60-year-old researcher, of course, who has altogether done more over his career or her career. We have more. We have the synergy grants. Now, they are very specific. They are the only ones where we have practically teams of PIs. Synergy grants are teams composed of 2 to 4 researchers and their research groups, so 2 to 4 PIs. The size of the grant goes up to 10 million euro for up to 6 years of duration. And you can get 4 million extra for the same reasons I mentioned before. So obviously, these are very competitive, very ambitious grants. The idea of synergy grant is effectively that if people put themselves together in these small groups, they can do more than the single researchers can do. They can have a synergetic effect. So many grants have interdisciplinary nature, and really they do something together that alone they couldn't do. Even 3 of them could not do if they would be alone. That is the idea. The strong synergetic effects providing an added value. Additionally, we have the proof of concept grants. So these you can only have if you have already won one of the 4 grants I mentioned before. So if you are a grant holder in the starting, consolidator, advanced or synergy grant schemes, you can apply for a proof of concept grant, giving you an extra 150K if you want several times during your project. For a duration of 18 months, you have the chance with this grant to effectively demonstrate an innovation idea. So if you have any idea coming out of your ERC grant with the potential for some economic or societal benefits, this is your chance to realize it on top with extra funding. So these are the ERC funding schemes in short. So what does it actually offer for you being a researcher from the ERA, meaning the European Research Area, outside the European Research Area, outside the European Union and its associated countries? Now, I mentioned quite often, obviously, the 1 million extra which you can get as a startup if you come from outside Europe. Also, you have the chance as a grant holder to keep your affiliation with your home institute outside Europe. Of course, it's European funding, so we expect you to spend a significant part of your time in Europe. That means at least 50% in Europe. So some indeed keep their positions abroad, come to Europe for 50% and spend time on the specific ERC project to 50% in Europe. Additionally, we expect that you spend a certain minimum amount of time of your total working time on the ERC project. This is 50% for starting grant at the moment, 40% for consolidated grant, and 30% for advanced grant. Team members can be based outside Europe. Very important for you as well if you hire your staff for your project. And furthermore, once you have the grant and you place it at a certain institution in Europe, you can move with your grant, of course, within Europe in its associated countries. That means, let's say you have the grant in one country, in one university, you get a call for a professorship in another country, another university or a research lab. Take your grant with you and place yourself there with your grant. You have a chance typically also to keep your old organization as a co-beneficiary. So very flexible in this regard. So now let's have a look when the next dates for application are. Now, first of all, we have to say, when we talk about the 2021 call calendar, these are expected dates. 2020 is practically over. We are still evaluating those research proposals, but you cannot apply anymore. Application deadlines have been gone this year. So the next one to focus on is 2021. In 2021 will be only official once the 2021 ERC work program will be published. And that depends, of course, on finally agreeing on the Horizon Europe program and budget. It will be published on our website once it's done. So the indicative dates for submission deadlines for starting grant 2021 calls are in March 2021 For consolidated grant, most likely April 2021, and for advanced grant, definitely not earlier than the end of August 2021. Proof of concept grants are less relevant for you, but typically always we have 3 per year. Important to notice is that in 2021 there will be no synergy grant call. The ERC Scientific Council has made this decision because simply our evaluation schedule is so pressed due to delays starting the New Horizon, the Euro program, that it will not be possible to literally physically conduct this evaluation. So 2022 you can expect a new synergy grant call. The panel structure of the ERC. If you prepare your proposal, you apply to one of those review panels. We have 3 domains: physical sciences, engineering, life sciences, and social sciences and humanities. And within these domains, we have 27 panels. These panels have substructures, so descriptors which tell you exactly what is in them. They were just updated, these panels. So we have now 11 review panels in the physical sciences and engineering. The new one is P11, the material engineering, combining, let's say, former descriptors from P3, physics panel, P5, the chemistry panel, and P8, an engineering panel. In the social science and humanities, they have been reordering quite intensively their descriptors and panels. There's one new panel being SH7, human mobility, environment, and space. The life sciences still with 9 panels from medical life sciences, non-medical life sciences, and applied life sciences. If you choose your panel, you're typically evaluated in this panel. If it doesn't fit, the panel might move it to another panel. That is, of course, possible. Also, you can choose different panels. You can choose a first panel and a secondary panel. If you do so, typically you are evaluated in the first and the secondary panel, and the first panel will make the decision on funding or not. So when you put your proposal forward, what is happening with it? Okay, you have a single submission. Everything is put forward in one submission, and then we run a 2-step evaluation process. In step 1, we put together a review panel, typically between 10 and 16 panel members. They read the so-called part B1 of your proposal, which is the scientific synopsis, 5 pages, the CV, and so on in your proposal, but not the full proposal. Based on this, they discuss it. They meet after they've made their independent remote reviews in a panel meeting, typically in Brussels. Nowadays they're online, and make decisions. They decide on your score. It might be a B or C. That means your proposal is rejected. A B means at the moment that you get a resubmission restriction of 1 year. So you have to pause for 1 year before you can reapply with a new proposal for the same proposal. You might get a C. That means you are not good enough and you get a 2-year submission restriction. If you're good, typically 1/3 are, very roughly, you get an A. If you're scored A, you go to step 2 of the evaluation process. In step 2, there's a remote assessment by panel members and by remote reviewers. They read the full proposal, part B1, part B2, once you look in more detail what the proposal is about. Once they have done that, individually, separately, remotely, they meet again and have a panel meeting and invite you to an interview. So you would normally have an interview in that building you've seen before in Brussels, currently online, and then the decision is made. They decide if you get a B, then this was not good enough and you will not be funded, or you scored an A, and then you are ranked. And an A means practically in step 2, you've done everything right. This is perfect, and some national funding organizations use this to actually fund those people who have an A and do not get money, because the A's are ranked, and depending where the budget stops, the funding stops. I must say from experience that over the last years, ERC finds more absolute excellent science being scored A in step 2 than we do have money. As a rough estimate, I would say, that's my personal estimate though, I would double the budget of ERC to be able to fund at least the top of the top excellence. The evaluation process is based on exactly one criterion. This is excellent, just excellent. There are no quota for anything. No quota, let's say, for countries or for gender or for nationalities or for subject areas. You name it. There's no quotas for this, just excellence. And excellence is evaluated on the research project, of course, its groundbreaking nature, its potential scientific impact, scientific approach. And of course, also on the principal investigator, intellectual capacity, creativity, commitment. Thereby, particular emphasis is put on research at the frontiers of science, scholarship, and engineering, typically found in multi- or interdisciplinary proposals with cross boundaries between different fields of research, or pioneering proposals addressing new and emerging fields of research, or proposals introducing unconventional innovative approaches and scientific inventions. Very often the words high risk, high gain are used. So what we mean is that we are ready to take a high risk with you if we can achieve high gain. So often the most ripe fruits hang very high, as we say. So to get them, you have to take risks. What we are not after is the risk, what we are after is a high gain. And for this, as I said, we are ready to take high risks. Just to say that there are some rumors out there, so I want to clarify a few things. Contrary to what you may think, ERC funds frontier research, and this is not just basic research. Of course, most of our proposals which we fund are indeed basic research, but quite a few are also applied research. There's no difference made between basic and applied research at ERC. Anything which is fascinating, new, and can break the frontiers of science has a chance to be funded. The second thing is about the budget. The budget is distributed among the scientific panels purely as a function of demand. So we have no preferred areas. The more is, let's say, requested in a certain area, the more money goes into that area. Could be any area, has to be extra to be funded. Then these panel titles I showed you before and the descriptors below them do not represent ERC scientific priorities. If you have an idea which does not perfectly fit onto one of them, submit it to the closest to them, and it will find its way. It's not the idea to predefine certain priorities and then to fund just this. Another thing is about the success rate. You've seen that in starting grant, it's 7 to 12 years after the, it's 2 to 7 years after the PhD. In consolidated grant, it's 7 to 12 years after the PhD for application. So some people think, oh, probably I only have a chance if I'm close to the upper limit of this because I'm more experienced. This is not the case. We of course know, and our evaluators know, that let's say 2 years after the PhD, we must have less experience and less to offer to a certain amount than someone being 7 years after the PhD. This is taken into account. This is showing a success rate, which is rather flat over all these different scientific ages after the PhD. Also, people think publication order is so decisive that it makes all the decision. That's not the case. What we look at nowadays more is that the publications you have, especially for the young generation, show a certain independence of your supervisor for your PhD. They show a lot of potential. They are high impact publications. They have made a difference already, not the pure mass of publications. Furthermore, the host institution is not an evaluation criterion. That's important. Think about it when you apply. Top institutions, of course, top researchers come from there. They're extremely active in application, but also less known institutions sometimes care a lot about these ERC grant holders who might be the only one or one of very few in this institution. Furthermore, some people think you can only apply for an ERC grant if you're highly accomplished scientists. That is not the case. Especially starting grant holders are often real starters who had just a fantastic idea. The second rumor is that to be successful, you have to continue an established research line, provide continuity, credibility. Now that is not the case. Especially the new risky things are our focus. So we've really had people being funded who sat in our office and said, I've been turned down so often in certain funding agencies with this, but you gave me a chance with my wild and crazy idea, and they had the chance to effectively become a researcher via their ideas. Another rumor is that if you have already had an ERC grant, you might be more or less likely to get another one. This plays no role. It just doesn't matter. The new proposal is just looked at it at its own merit by the panel. It makes no difference if the money you had before came from ERC somewhere else, or if you had an ERC grant or you didn't. And finally, one other rumor is that the more socially or, for instance, medically relevant the grant proposal is, the higher the chances of it getting funded. Also, this is not true. We purely fund depending on excellence as the only criterion. So the societal, for instance, medical, clinical applications are not decisive for a proposal being funded or not. So let's have, to finish slowly off, an international participation overview on ERC funding. So what we've seen throughout Horizon 2020 calls that we've got numerous applications from countries all over the world, and especially from young people. Most come from the United States of America, but very many, and especially from young people, come, as you can see here, also from China, India, and other countries. This is very motivating. The yellow bars present the starting grant. These, especially the young people, apply. If you see how that changed over time over Horizon 2020, it's very obvious that the participation from non-EU associated countries nationals has increased over time, especially for starting consolidated grant, where we started with below 6% at the beginning of ERC, and by now more than 11% of all applications come from nationals outside the European Union and its associated countries. So who got funded? Now altogether, indeed, 47 non-EU AC nationalities got funding from ERC, and that accounts for over 8% of the overall ERC grants. You can see the leading countries here as well from Asia, and especially young people, of course, got the funding because also they applied more actively. In India, that makes 59 starting consolidated grants with nationalities from India, and people with nationalities from India. Also China and Japan with 50 and 25, and very, very much presented. But among the others, you have more countries from Asia, from Singapore, from Malaysia, from the Philippines, from Thailand, from Indonesia, and from Vietnam. So people with nationalities from these countries have been funded too. One has to say that most of the grant holders coming from these areas already had been in Europe before they applied for an ERC grant to effectively stay in Europe. So now let's have a look who actually moved from outside Europe into Europe. So here we talk about grant holders which were actually outside the EU or an associated country at the time of application. These are, by majority even, nationals of the European Union associated and the associated countries who effectively applied to return to the European Union. So that's one way back to Europe, very intensively used, for instance, by people from the United States of America, as you can see here, but also from other countries throughout the world. It's not just the PIs who practically profit from ERC grants. As said before, teams are quite large. Occasionally, we talk about normally 5 people being financed via an ERC grant, not just the PI. So here is an analysis of the nationalities of team members working in 1,900 starting and advanced grants. And the data show that in the EU, before in the EU, these team members were already 71% from the European Union. Another 10% have nationalities from associated countries, but a significant number of 17% have nationalities from outside the EU and associated countries. So the most active countries here, as clearly shown in statistics, are China, the US, and India. Now finally, let's have a very short look at a few projects which were funded, just to give you an inspiration about people moving around the world to pick up ERC grants. The first one is a mathematics project on dynamics of quasi-periodic type. Quasi-periodic, the program is called. And this researcher moved from Brazil to France to have an ERC starting grant in 2010. Another example is a life science project in the neurosciences area, Active Fly. It's an example of someone moving from Latin America and the Caribbean, specifically from Argentina, with an ERC starting grant in 2017 to Portugal. Another example is a more applied project in the social sciences. He's about detecting harassing automatization, which you find in social media, so-called bots. And he moved with his grant in 2017 from Canada to the United Kingdom. Finally, but absolutely not last, is an example from Asia, the project Costas Graph in the astronomy area on cosmological tests of gravity. Dr. Katsuya Koyama from Japan moved in 2014 to the University of Portsmouth in the UK. Okay, having gone through this, before I finish my talk, allow me a last word on the ERC during the COVID-19 crisis. As you see, I give my presentation not from the premises of the ERC, but from my private office. So clearly the ERC has been affected very harshly personally, but also operationally, like about everyone else, by COVID-19. But the most important thing I'd like to say is that the ERC has maintained its operations fully. So we have been fully operational since the start of the crisis. That meant that all applicants could put forward their proposals to the deadlines as originally proposed. We conducted, with all the difficulties, the evaluations as foreseen, timely, so the funding could take place and does take place timely. Doing all of this, ERC has shown a lot of flexibility. That means, for instance, that grants were allowed to start a little bit later than usual if affected by the COVID-19 crisis, or even running grants had a reason to extend their project period due to issues with COVID-19. I also want to point your attention on a selection of related ERC projects, which you find under that link. Actually, there you find 50 different projects. They're not just from life sciences. There are, of course, many medical projects, biology projects, etc. But you also find engineering projects, how to tackle, for instance, administering injections, things like that. Or you find social science projects, which care, for instance, about how crisis management is done, economic crisis management, social crisis, personal crisis management. So very fascinating project, just have a read. And if you want to know more about the EU response to COVID-19, maybe also go to the EU-funded coronavirus and pandemic research web pages at this link below. It's very interesting and fascinating. There's, of course, targeted research taking place, direct money investment by the European Commission into fighting COVID-19. And with this, I want just to point your attention to the website of the ERC. If you want further information, especially the website and other social media channels, of course, have all the detailed information on the ERC, including the new work program, including the guide for applicants, also the guide for reviewers, so you see what the reviewers are instructed with, and all the information when the call is open, the links to where you put your proposal in. Everything you need to apply and to be fully informed is on our website. And with this, I would very much thank for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andreas. I think you've covered a lot of ground, and I have been paying attention, of course, to the questions throughout your presentations. There are quite a few. One of the questions was where to find information about ERC-funded projects, and as you've just pointed out at the end, of course, the ERC website is the place to look at. A lot of the questions you have answered during the presentation, and as I said at the beginning, you will all receive the slides and you will all receive a recording, so you can at your own leisure go through this again and maybe find the answers to your questions. There are a few questions that maybe Andreas can give us some concrete advice on. There was a question on what defines high gain.
Yeah, maybe let me answer both questions you just asked. And the first one, I just want to add, indeed, you can go to our website and there is a search function. So if you look for ERC funded project there, you can search and you can practically select the call year if you want. You can also select a certain topic. You can select a certain grant scheme, for instance, starting grant scheme. So you could, let's say, you look for all starting grant projects which have to do with, let's say, black holes, okay, and then you will find all projects which relate to universe sciences, black holes, or fundamental physics, black holes, in being starting grants. So you can find these projects, you will find the abstract, the funding amount, and you can compare yourself also with these applicants. And the next point is high gain. Now, high gain, what we want is effectively something that breaks the frontiers of science, as I said before, so something which is truly new. So let me say what's not high gain. What is not high gain for us is an incremental project where you just continue something which has been done before. And if you would spend 5 years and you would spend all the millions of research money, you would just achieve small incremental steps forward. Nobody would be overly excited about it. That's normally not what we fund. There are projects which focus on continuity. We are not doing this. We have a project We give it 5 years. You start from somewhere, you end somewhere. And what we want is something which just completely opens up, for instance, a new field or has a new breakthrough science. We have those projects. We have projects, as I said, which lead to fantastic inventions. You see our Synergy Grant projects, for instance, was involved Black Hole Canyon in photographing that black hole. This was a high risk taking because we took 14 million euros in our hands to fund this one. It went into, of course, even a larger setup to achieve this, not alone, but made a key contribution to this. It could have failed completely, but even if it would have failed, it would have built an infrastructure, enormous, international infrastructure of huge value. But having made this success, this breakthrough success, that's effectively what we are after. To achieve this, we are ready to fail in a few projects. So that's what we want with high gain.
Thank you, Andreas. There were a lot of questions. Researchers wondering once again about whether there's a certain priority area, whether there are predefined research topics. Maybe you could just briefly summarize again at the bottom-up approach.
Indeed, summarize again what we call the bottom-up approach, even if this word is sometimes unusual for people. What we mean with this, that you as a researcher, only you define what you want to do. We are not there to prescribe anything. So we give you review panels because we have to find people who review in certain areas. If you have a mathematics proposal, obviously we have to find mathematicians to review a proposal, so you send it to a certain review panel. But if your proposal is a completely new area, completely new idea of statistics, this links mathematics to any other field of science, doesn't fit in anywhere, seemingly. Now then we'll find reviewers from the different review panels to review this one. And the most optimal panel, where let's say the majority of the methodology of your proposal sits in, to be your main panel. But you are not limited by any subject areas, even if a certain field is not specifically lined up in the subdescriptors of our panels. You decide what you want to do. You're completely free what you want to do in all areas, basic science, applied science, new areas, established areas, of course, as well. But you want to have new research done in all possible areas. That's really very important to understand.
Thank you. 2 more questions. There's one question regarding whether it is necessary to have a fixed appointment with an institution to be eligible to apply for an ERC grant. And a second question, is it possible, or how is it perceived if one applies for an ERC grant with the same institution where one completed one's PhD? Is that okay or not okay?
To start with the second, this is absolutely okay. Of course, we see a lot of mobility, that is clear. We see mobility. People look for new host institutions and say, okay, I've done, let's say, my PhD, my postdoc there, now I want to move there. This is okay, but we see as many people who just stay with their, let's say, postdoc institutions they're just sitting in, and they have a great idea, and they have already the facilities, they know their labs, they know their colleagues, they have already collaborators identified, so that can occasionally be actually an advantage for you, okay, just for you personally. It doesn't have to be, but it can. And it will not be seen in any form in a bad way. So if you have perfect conditions at your current host institution, let's say somewhere in Europe, and you want to stay there, do it. If you want to move into one, do it. You just have to make sure that your project can run successfully at that place. So no advantage or disadvantage based on this. And then the other one, do you have already kind of a fixed, you called it, I think, a fixed position with a host institution? I mean, depends what you mean with fixed position. You don't have to have anything, meaning you don't have to have a permanent position. You don't have to have a part-time position at a certain institution. But what you have to have is the agreement of the host institution to host you. So one of the things you have to send in together with your proposal is a so-called host institution letter. That is a letter, an agreement of several pages. This more or less summarizes the conditions of you working at the host institution. It's a standard letter, and the host institution here subscribes to the fact that they give you all the freedom how to use the money. You are freely to be enabled to choose your own team. They have to give you the facilities to host you in the rooms, in the labs, and everything you needed. That is what they're effectively subscribing to, okay? So typically, there's an ultra exception for some people who can run as a private entity their grants, but this is an ultra exception. Okay, we talk, don't know what we talk about, but it's much less than 1% of the project. It's the ultra exception. Probably it's saying about the promille area. But normally you have to have a host institution identified before which hosts you and signs this host institution letter. That's what you have to have, okay?
Thank you, Andreas. And related to this, of course, the question concerning the UK and the Brexit. This is, of course, the question, can they still host ERC grantees? Can British applicants still apply? What is your answer here?
At the moment, in 2020, the UK was fully eligible. This was an agreement between the UK and the European Union at the beginning of the year. So at the moment, we still continue as if nothing has happened, okay? Meaning UK, we never talk about nationalities, by the way. We talk about people hosted in the United Kingdom. You can have any nationality of the world, it does not matter, okay? But if you want to be hosted in the United Kingdom and you applied in 2020, which is now over, you could have done that, and we evaluate totally equally to anyone else. Purely science is evaluated. No advantage, no disadvantage. And yes, you could be hosted. But for 2021, I cannot give you an answer on this. As you know, this is a highly discussed critical political issue, and the decision on Brexit and how to handle the different parts of Brexit has not been made yet. And it will depend on this, what will happen with the participation of the United Kingdom to the new framework program of research and innovation, the Horizon Europe. This decision, as I said, has not been taken. You know that many countries are not part of the European Union, but they participate by an association agreement, like I mentioned, Switzerland, or Israel, or Iceland, or Norway, or Turkey, or Azerbaijan, or Armenia, or the Ukraine, you know, just to name a long list, and there's few more of those, of course. They can participate because the European Union and the country agreed on an association agreement. And for the UK, once they have finally completely left the European Union, it will depend if the United Kingdom negotiates an association agreement with Europe, effectively as a negotiator of the European Commission. And if this will happen and under which conditions, I cannot comment on because we simply do not know.
Thank you so much, Andreas. There were, of course, a lot more questions, but we don't have time to answer them now. Again, a lot of it was answered in the presentation itself, so please look at it again at your own leisure, and we will type them up as well and add them to the slides. You will also receive, of course, the contact details of the presenters and information about websites where you can find answers to all your questions. But we will now give the floor to our second presenter, Davide. And Davide is talking about something else, the opportunity to work on an ERC-funded project, not as a PI, but as a visiting researcher. So before we start this, I have prepared a final poll. And again, I'd like to know whether you'd be interested in principle in a job opportunity on an ERC-funded project when you are aware of this. So, and we can see right now, of course, yes, people are excited about this opportunity. I think not a lot of people know about this, and not a lot of people know that there are certain bilateral agreements between the ERC and government agencies in selected countries. And Davide, in a minute, will be talking to us about this. So with this, Davide, I'm going to make you the presenter. Just give me a second here. So Davide, please share your slides and start your presentation.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Susanne. And I can see there are still more than 400 of you connected. I want to thank you for resisting up to this point late in the afternoon. And I will try to be as concise as possible, presenting you this opportunity to join an ERC team. What are implementing arrangements? Implementing arrangements are an international agreement fostering the collaboration, the international collaboration, and giving you the chance to visit an ERC team, partially supported by a foreign agency. Up to this point, there are 14 of these agreements around the world, signed with 12 different countries. As you can see in the map, many of these countries are actually in Asia. And up to this point, more than 400 researchers visited an ERC project since the beginning of this program, so since 2012. Next call for expression of interest, our internal call, will be in November 2020, but I will explain you that later on. I want to underline which are these agencies, foreign agencies, which are actually participating. You have National Research Foundation from South Korea, National Natural Science Foundation from China, two different agencies from Japan, Japan Society for Promotion of Science and Japan Science and Technology Agency. And from India, the Scientific Engineering Research Board, as well as the National Research Foundation from Singapore. All these agreements have been signed from 2012. And as you can see here, the participation, the feedback the ERC grantees give, expressing their interest to host researchers from foreign agencies, has been quite important. As you can see, the number are increasing. And in the last year, we really had a lot of ERC grantees happy to host different researchers from different countries. These are actually some numbers regarding the visiting researcher, which year by year actually join an ERC team. As you can see, many researchers are coming from Asia, but it's important to underline that nationality is not an important parameter. Basically, it's open to anybody upon the condition that these people, you are actually funded by one of these agencies. Of course, for 2019, we still have very preliminary data because of COVID pandemic crisis. Some of the agencies actually postponed the call. Some other actually just postponed visits that have been already arranged. But the program is going ahead. I know you are tired at this point, but I will be very quickly. This is very simple. This is how does it work? What's the procedure? So we launch a call of expression of interest, an internal one, toward eligible ERCPIs every year, typically in October, November. They have 1 month to express their interest to participate. After that, we send a list of interested PIs to all the funding agencies across the world. These then launch their own internal call to all the eligible scientists. This can be you if you're funded by one of these agencies. And then you will have to contact an ERC grantee to seek an agreement about a possible research visit. After that, the ERCPI, if you find an agreement, will support you with a letter, and as well as the host institution will do the same, and they will provide this letter of support to your national funding agency. At that point, they will evaluate it, and then if you are a successful applicant, you will have to plan and execute the visit in agreement with the PI, ERCPI. There are some processes and conditions which are common to all the agreements. The first one is that the ERC does not intervene in the communication between you and the ERC grantee. So it's up to you to try to negotiate a visit, try to find common interest. The selection is done by each non-European funding agency without our intervention at all. And the visit should take place, of course, in the lifetime of the ERC project because it's partially supported by ERC grant. Of course, the collaboration has to occur in the areas of scientific, common areas of scientific pursuit or topic, which you have a mutual interest with. And the visiting researcher may be incorporated in the research team for the duration of the visit. I take this opportunity to give you some information. We will launch our internal call in November 2020, but what is interesting for you is that probably your funding agency will launch their internal call for expression of interest in the beginning of 2021. You can find more information at the website below, and very important, this is our functional mailbox. It's implementing arrangements. I'm the person behind this functional mailbox, so you already know me, and please don't hesitate to contact us. I'm happy to help you and provide you information on this matter. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Well, thank you so much, David. And I'll let your slide on for just a minute, because a key question is where to find information. Of course, people are from different countries and different nationalities, and they're all wondering, am I eligible for this scheme? And I think, as you just said, this is the page to look at to find out whether your country where you're employed at or in, has an agreement and you can apply under this scheme.
And at this page, you will find also all the agreement that has been signed with ERC. So you will find a lot of details already there, but please do not hesitate to contact us.
Thank you. I think this is a great closing word from you, that you, of course, are open to receiving questions. There was one question that maybe is interesting. Again, there's always this concern that the ERC is swaying towards the natural sciences, and the humanities and social sciences are somewhat neglected. Maybe David and Andreas, do you have any comment on that? David, maybe first.
No, yes, regarding implementing arrangement, we can say that we are signing every year a new agreement with new agencies, and we are actually open to all kind of agency from any kind of domain. Once there is an interest from their side, we are happy to really involve any of them. So we don't have any preferential domain at all, and we are also happy to have multidisciplinary project.
Thank you, David. And
you can add something, of course.
Sorry for interrupting you. Andreas, do you have any final comments on this?
Yeah, just to add to what David said, of course, that's also true for our funding grants for ERC. It is really the researchers themselves who decide where the money goes. So there are no preferences. We have a social science domain, a life science domain, and a physical and engineering domain with these 27 panels. But as I said in the main presentation, the budget is distributed completely depending on demand. So the more proposals come in from the social science domain, the more will be funded in the social science domain. And there will be no difference made if it is a social science proposal or if it is a very harsh, physical science or engineering proposal. There's no difference between soft or hard science, as I said, between applied science or basic science. The purely demand. And what we've observed over the last years actually is that the demand from the physical and engineering side was rather constant. So it stayed roughly, to be honest, at this 44%, which the Scientific Council initially had foreseen for the funding in this area. In the first years, it was actually fixed to a certain percentage for each area. This is not the case anymore. It has been not the case for several years. And we've seen over the last years that social sciences have more and more interest in the ERC. So proportionally, they have grown over the last years, being almost, if you look at the submissions we just received for our new advanced grant call, social sciences and the life sciences roughly get the equal amount. They practically share, let's say, the rest after you've taken off the 44% for physical sciences and engineering. So if more interest is shown by a certain science area, it can get more funding, which automatically in the bottom-up approach supports those areas where researchers have an interest. So if they are more interested in COVID-19 or they are more interested in climate change. And you see that in an increased frequency of proposals being forwarded to the ERC, then automatically those areas will also get more money, but only then.
Well, thank you for that. Maybe if you allow me to summarize, there are lots of opportunities for researchers of any nationality, any academic discipline. Any idea that you have is potentially open for funding by the ERC. We've heard from David, there's additional opportunities for short-term attachments if there happens to be a bilateral agreement in place in the country where you're currently working. There are, of course, also opportunities to just apply for a job vacancy on an ERC-funded project, and you find information about these opportunities on the EURAXESS portal. And I think this is my cue, because I quickly want to also show you a little bit about what EURAXESS does. EURAXESS is the agency that I'm working for. I told you I'm working for EURAXESS ASEAN based in Singapore, but what EURAXESS is, it's a wonderful opportunity for you to find information and support for your research career development in Europe or with European partners. So it's really a one-stop information and support tool. And I would really strongly recommend for all of you to make use of this database and this network. It really is a growing global network of researchers of all disciplines. And it's a wonderful opportunity specifically for early career researchers that are looking to network themselves with their peers in Europe and across the globe. So please use this opportunity. What makes EURAXESS so exciting? I've seen in the presentation that we had, there were a lot of questions about what opportunities are there for funding for those of you that don't have a PhD as yet, because as we've heard, a PhD is a requirement for an ERC grant. And there are lots of opportunities to get PhD research funded in Europe. So the funding portal is a wonderful opportunity for you to find out what kind of research jobs are available in Europe, what fellowships, what funding opportunities, not only in the context of the EU's Research and Innovation Framework Program, Horizon 2020 currently, and soon to be Horizon Europe, but also the funding opportunities by those 36 European countries that make up the EURAXESS network. EURAXESS also offers a partnering tool, and I think, again, from the questions that we've had, this is something that researchers are looking for. They want to find potential collaborators, be it individuals or be it research organizations, universities or businesses. So again, there's a fabulous opportunity for you to complement your network and find potential collaborators across Europe. And this is a question that I've seen multiple times and I haven't responded to it because I want to mention that here. EURAXESS also hosts a hosting database. So this is where you find offers from institutions or researchers across Europe that are looking to host researchers that are coming to the European research area from outside or that are moving within the European research area. So once again, specifically for those amongst you that are just starting your research career and you don't have that network yet, a wonderful opportunity to find out where the opportunities are in Europe. You also find a lot of information, tons and tons of information on how to move to Europe, what's it like to live in Europe, what's it like to work in Europe. So all the questions that you have concerning your visa status, your housing options, your insurance options, you name it, it's on that particular platform, along with something that I think makes this a unique network, which is the personalized assistance. So across the European research area, we have these so-called EURAXESS service centers, and this is where you as a researcher can get assistance free of charge to make your mobility experience an easy one. And this is not only for you as the researcher that is moving, but also the family that may be accompanying you. So EURAXESS Worldwide is, and I'm part of this, is really a global network. Our job is to connect you with Europe. I am based in Singapore, but I know a lot of my colleagues are online just now, of course, across Asia, in Korea, in Japan, in China, in India. We have colleagues in Australia, New Zealand, in Latin America, in North America, and here across Southeast Asia. So if you want to get in touch with us, if you want to find out more, please have a look at the EURAXESS portal. Do sign up. This is a project. Everything that we do is free of charge, and please, I can only encourage you to use the opportunity and sign up and become a member of this growing network. Now, I think that leaves me with saying thank you to David and Andreas for an excellent presentation. That was really inspiring. And to our listeners today, thank you for taking the time to join us. The message again, the ERC is open for you. Europe is open for you as researchers. The information will be shared with you via email in the next couple of days. And I think all of us are looking forward to hearing from you and maybe to see you in your ERC funded position in the near future. And I think with this, thank you so much, David, Andreas.
Thank you.
Goodbye from Singapore.
Thank you very much.
And goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.